The enemy of my enemy is my friend is an ancient proverb which suggests that two parties can or should work together against a same or a common enemy. A phrase that some people consider to be similar is found in a Sanskrit treatise on statecraft, the Arthashastra, which dates back in the 4th century BC. This proverb is indoctrinated in multiple contexts, permutations, combinations in modern diplomacy, even today. 1/3 of India's borders covered in the Northeast region, with the countries bordering with Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and mainly China. Now, China has gathered a lot of beef with many of its neighbors and allied partners in ASEAN that also either borders with India or are trading partners or diplomatically allied with India in national security with the said doctrine. Today, we will take a deep dive from a perspective of military diplomacy from the Northeast India's geographic location, the insurgencies in the area, about which we had a discussion with General Chauhan a few months back, the link of which you will find on the right top corner. We'll correlate these insurgencies with Chinese aggression and then look at the relations with other border nations with India in the Northeast and how can they be overviewed to look at relation with India for mutual security and their China tiff that India can actually leverage upon as everyone is facing China's malignant salami slicing or trade/political strong arming policies in the region. Today, we pick from the part where General Chauhan and I left our conversation the last time on the sentiment of need of amplified outlook by the center in the Northeast for its growth and internal resilience. Today, we will extrapolate that sentiment in terms of monitoring and addressing the external threat created by China's strategic placement across Northeast borders, especially at the Siliguri corridor and the military diplomacy with the distressed neighbors to achieve symbiotic relations for mutual security. Today, we have with us alphabetically General Balbir Singh Sandhu and General Shokin Chauhan. General Balbir Singh Sandhu, AVSM, VSM, recipient of the Army Commander's Commendation Card, former Director General of Information Technology, DGIT, and DGST, that is Supply and Transport, and a distinguished fellow of USA. Welcome to Diplomacy Direct, General Sandhu.
Thank you.
And General Shokin Chauhan, PVSM, AVSM, recipient of Gallantry Award, Yuddha Seva Medal, and Sena Medal, former Director General, Assam Rifles, and chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group in the Northeast. So it's a pleasure to have you on Diplomacy Direct yet again, General Chauhan, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome, sir.
It's a pleasure to have General Balbir on the show. We've been buddies for a long time. He's a year senior to me from the NDA, but he's very well known in the Northeast. He's been posted there often, and I'm glad you got him here to share this forum with us. And his views will be absolutely, critical to our thought process, especially since he's a logistic expert. And much of the wars that we fight in the Northeast are logistic nightmares.
Absolutely. So thanks both of you gentlemen, and also happy NDA day today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So again, for the starters, let's review an old fact that China is creating and or supporting insurgencies in the Northeast. There are concrete evidences that tie China to the insurgent activities from the neighboring border states in India. There are recorded confessions by the captured insurgents from the People's Liberation Army of Manipur that there are training camps in Yunnan, China for the northeastern insurgent groups. The border area from Myanmar side bordering Manipur's More area, and then the Naga training camp in Myanmar's Singh division that lies right across the Arunachal Pradesh border, and then reports are that they host these groups and the training camps that has given evidences of hideouts and the escape routes to the insurgents to China via the Sino-Myanmar border area. Also, the Ulfa chief Paresh Barua is reported and confirmed to be under asylum in China. China has funded the United Liberation Front of West and South Asia, which is the strategic controlling body to the other insurgent groups like the Ulfa. The National Democratic Front of Bodoland, or the KLO, and your NDFB, that is the Songbijit, right? China had been spying over 10,000 Indian organizations, individuals, using a global database, and also enacting internal unrest to halt the Naga peace deal process, where they ride on the ethnic and geographic claims and sentiments. Like the NSCIM chief Muiwa says that he won't support Nagaland accepting Indian constitution, stating the non-conformity to the Treaty of Yandebo. So putting all that in perspective, the question is that, is it that easy to decipher that the Chinese have certainly learnt a thing or two from their Paki friends in adoption of terrorism, that is death by 1,000 cuts, as one of the foreign policy that now translates into cross-border insurgencies in Northeast to create disturbance and also subsequent regional disconnect for India to gauge the China's game plan. And so basically this is clear that it wants to capitalize on the Northeast internal fault lines and fuel these insurgent movements. Is this that simple as it looks, or there is more to it? What is the local sentiment to all this? What is the center doing about it? And can you bring out in this discussion the pivotal role that the military or the center will have to play here? So, gentlemen.
Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me. All that you said about China following the policies, China doesn't learn from Pakistan. China is a front runner in all strategies that you can never think of.
Exactly.
And I admire China for one thing, that they think about 75 to 100 years ahead, right? They fooled the entire world. And I used to wonder 40 years back, India and China's net financial worth, the GDP was same. And they galloped, and today there's various estimates of 5 or 6 times our size of our economy. And they didn't fool us. The whole world volunteered to be fooled, to allow China to become the manufacturing hub. And China has a very clear-cut strategy. Out of their 4 modernization, military modernization was placed the last. It was the economic and other modernization which they placed first. Because a very famous saying in Punjabi, कि जिसके घर में दाने ना उसके पागल भी सियाने, in the sense that if you have finances, you can rule the roost. Even if you see in your villages, in your towns, a guy who has money, he can dictate terms, even if he's not so wise. So China made itself economically so strong to put the entire world. 5 years back, if a person like you asks a Chinese diplomat, and you now trying to compete with America, they said, come on, have a heart. America is a world leader. We are just about Chinese. But you ask them today, they said, yes, we want to have the world go our way. They have started having the guts to say that the Chinese model of democracy, which is the Communist Party ruled, single party rule, with all the ills of lack of liberalization, and except for the economic one, and that's the model that the world should follow. Their BRI is less of a economic or a connectivity thing. It is more of their reach towards to the world to say that this is the way you should follow Chinese model of development. So hence, to say that they learned from the Chinese, from the Pakistanis, no. They have always had a role in the insurgencies, whether as early as the 60s in the Naga, the Mizo insurgency, and even the Mighty insurgency. It is just the accelerator that they decide how much to press. With that, Rajiv Gandhi visit and CBMs, so they slow down the fuel, right? And the day Ladakh happened, and the day Chinese came out again as a certain thing, my thought was, first thing was that they will probably now start activating whatever was dominant in the Northeast. So to that extent, again, there's a very famous saying by Iqbal कि खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से ये खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. So to blame Chinese for not allowing us or to exploiting our fault lines, I think will be little wrong. I need to put my own house in order, for which I have had 75 years to do. And if I can't do it in 75 years, I need to really take stock of my own self. To expect somebody else not to exploit your fault line when you're not having so conducive relations is not a very wise idea. So China was doing it, is doing it, and shall continue to do it, depending on the situation of relations between the two countries. The second part of your question was, don't the people understand? These games are too complex for an average citizen to understand. Even an average, fairly educated person will never believe that somebody from outside is doing it. They are experts, their intelligence agencies, their contacts to contact are able to convince a person that he is being wronged. And they are able to convince a group of people out of some innocuous looking issues that they have been alienated, they have been deprived. And that is what gives impetus to insurgencies.
I totally agree with General Balbir. It's a complex situation. I must take you back to history. The Naga insurgency started as an insurgency in 1956. So if you extrapolate those 56 to 2022, you have 66 years to have sorted this out. We haven't been able to sort it out. Let me just go through some timelines so that we are able to understand where we should blame China and where we shouldn't blame China. In 1946, when we were getting independent, a group of Nagas called the Naga Club went to the British and told them that, look, we don't want to be a part of India. They had told them in 1929 also. But in 1946, when the independence of India became a reality, they had an agreement with the governor of Assam called Hydari, wherein they agreed that for 10 years they would join the government, the Indian Republic, and after 10 years they would be given a choice on whether they should or should not join. However, immediately after independence, our political leaders abrogated this agreement. So that's the first issue when you talk of trust. The second thing that General Balbir said was about the exploitation of fault lines. I also totally agree with him. Why would a not so friendly neighbor not exploit fault lines? Especially when both Arthashastra and his famous philosopher Singh says the same thing. The school of thought is clear. If you can exploit fault lines, if you can win without fighting, why not? If someone from our side had done it, we would have called them a strategic expert. Because they're doing it from that side, they're the evil empire. The third issue is, historically, when you go back to how China got involved, in 1956, 57, 58, we had the Indian Army fully involved in Nagaland. That is the time when these groups of Nagas went to China for training. In 1962, we had the agreement with Nehru, the 10-point agreement, and subsequently the 18-point agreement. And finally, Nagaland became a state to the Indian Union in 1963. The 1962 war had just ended. Once again, the same story. You have made a state. The Nagas have participated in the political process from 1963 onwards. Surely we could have got them on ground. Right? We had the Shillong Agreement in 1975, wherein the Naga federal government and the NNC, Naga National Committee, agreed to accept the Indian Constitution. What was left out was a gang of about 200 odd insurgents who had gone to China and were coming back, and at that time were in camps in Burma. Why could we have not got them at that time? So at each point, Vipul, we have had missteps. Those missteps continue. And as we show these missteps, the people on the ground, when they realize that you are not serious about solving an issue, simply feel that they also are not serious about solving it. Why no insurgency, and General Balbir will agree with me, the center of gravity of any insurgency is the people. If the people stop contributing cadre to the Naga insurgents, or to the Bodo insurgents, or to the Ulfa insurgents, or to the PLA, how will this insurgency survive? So if we've not been able to convince the people of those states, or the mothers of that state, not to allow their sons and daughters to join these insurgencies, then we have not been able to achieve anything. So the first issue would be that governance is a severe problem there, a major issue. We should have sorted out that governance. We have to convince the people of that place that don't join the insurgency. India will give you a better option. So I refuse to just blame China. China will use it. It will always use it, and any inimical state will use it. But we have to sort out our governance.
Just to add to that, I was posted there as a brigadier, and Vipul, the listeners need to understand the difference between the role of security forces and the governance, and the political leadership and the administration. Like what Shokin brought out, the mandate to the security forces is always to get the situation under control to a level where the civil administration and political leadership can take it forward to solve the very foundation of the problem. And let me assure you, this has been done many times in all insurgency infested states of India. Only places where the political leadership would take things forward was Mizoram and Punjab, and where the problem got resolved. I remember when I was last in Nagaland and we did a project, the army did a project, and the chief minister of the state came, he says, there was a time many years back when you looked at the army, that they're coming for a cordon and search and all, they will search your houses. He says, now we look at the army as, the leaders of development. He says, places where I need to give, say, 1 crore to my civil departments to do the job, the army does it in 10 lakhs, right? So, like what Shokin says, when the security situation is brought to this level, the political and the administrative leadership must grab this moment and start playing their role so that the people do not find it justifiable to send their children to form part of the insurgent cadres. And that's how, insurgents, for them, local population is like what water is for a fish. They know very well they can't survive otherwise. So we need to do much more as the leaders of the political parties and administration to do that.
Absolutely. And like you said some time back that, it's kind of volunteered foolishness of not looking ahead and voluntarily getting into these cadres, not looking into the international news that what China is malignantly trying to do with the other states also, and they are just trying to do it for their own gain. People should actually give some time for the donor or the look or act east policies to get enforced and to show its changes. And that brings us to the Chinese encroachment saga in the neighboring countries, one by one. So along the Nepalese border, if people want to have these examples, so even along the Nepalese border regions with China, encroachment is in 11 Nepali districts, and offensive Chinese activities are observed about in the Himalayas and the Mount Everest, the Humla, the Rasua, the Sindhupal Chowk, the village of Rui in Gorkha, and other 33 hectares land is being now occupied by China. And then there was a news of the arrival of Chinese troops on boats, assist teach Chinese to the regional Nepalese people, the encroached areas. Now, Bhutan is China's only neighbor that doesn't have diplomatic relations with Beijing and has officially allowed India to guide its foreign policy until the two signed a new friendship treaty in 2007. Bhutan is far closer to India as compared to China, to the effect that Bhutan does not even have Chinese consulate. China also claims to own a large chunk of eastern Bhutan, including areas like Cherkip, Gompa, Do, Dungmar, Gesur, right? And on 5th July 2021, China stated that it has a border dispute with Bhutan for the first time since 1986. So Bhutan and China then signed an MOU for expediting the Bhutan-China boundary. And these negotiations happened in October 2021. So this is a typical example of another state which is strong-armed again, right? Then coming to Bangladesh, though China and Bangladesh enjoyed mutual cooperation and friendship with Bangladesh's support for the One China policy. However, India-Bangladesh bonhomie scales, in 2021, marking 50 years of ties and the Golden Jubilee independence from Pakistan and all of that. And then 2022 begins with Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina appreciating PM Modi's vaccination diplomacy for gifting 2 million doses of AstraZeneca Oxford University vaccine, that's the Covishield. And now this bonhomie is pricking in Beijing's eyes, and so much so that the progressive anticipation led the Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh, Ling Jiming, to warn Bangladesh of substantial damage to relations if it joins US-led Quad alliance. And then coming to Myanmar. So China-Myanmar agreed upon their borders in 1960s with 2,185 kilometers along the shared borders between the two. There's been growing unrest regarding the Chinese encroachment in Myanmar's northern Shan state as well. And then there's also been ongoing clashes between ethnic Chinese rebels and the Myanmar military near the China-Myanmar border, disturbing the relations between the two nations. So putting all these things together, so when India is making its, so this is internal and external perspective of the policy. So when India makes their policy for military deterrence against Chinese PLA, all these factors will count. So how will they count, and how are we using that as a planning tool, and how does all this look?
I think, Shokin, you would be having a closer knowledge about what goes on in Nepal.
Right, sir.
You've been there as a defense attaché.
Yeah.
Just take it on.
Right. See, Vipul, once again, you've added a lot of facts, but let me just try and clear each place and bring in a little perspective of history so that we're clear about how we are dealing and what kind of people are we dealing with. When India became independent in 1947, in 1950, Chairman Mao likened Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, Myanmar, and Outer Mongolia as 5 fingers of his palm, in which he said that these 5 fingers belong to China. In 1950, the King Mahendra was alarmed by this statement.
Did this include Arunachal as well in the 5?
Yeah, it did, sir, but as countries.
You know, but
in the as countries,
of 5.
It was Arunachal.
Also.
So yeah, it was part of that southern Tibet, as they say. So in 1950, we had a situation when King Mahendra contacted the government of India, and we actually had an Indian military team going to Nepal and setting up camps along the Nepal-China border or Nepal-Tibet border. Unfortunately, Vipul, we lost the 1962 border war. Once we lost that, King Mahendra realized that since India can't protect itself, how will it protect Nepal or protect Nepal's interests from China? So from 1962 to 1967, they persuaded the government of India to remove the Indian military teams from Nepal. And by 1967 to 69, these teams were removed. So we were close at a particular time, but it is our fault that we weren't strong enough. Which nation will put its foreign policy in your hands if it feels that you will not be able to protect it? That's the issue about Nepal. Today, you're talking of 34 hectares in the overall land boundaries of countries. 34 hectares is negligible. Of course, you're talking of places, and I've been to all these places in Lomangthang and the upper reaches of Mustang province, which border China. There is no border fence there.
So also 11 districts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that in terms of a country's border, 34 hectares is negligible if the country doesn't want to make a big deal out of it. But just a little more history backwards. Nepal and China through Tibet have been trading, have been in military pacts with each other since the 17th century. After Nepalese lost to the Qing Empire in 1769, they signed the Treaty of Thapatali in 1854 or 1855, which essentially made Nepal a vassal of the Chinese Empire. And the Nepalese were actually giving tribute to the Chinese Empire in Beijing. Once the British came in and became a stronger power, Nepalese stopped that and started following the British, because British were a far stronger power and China had become very weak. So in this yin yang of foreign policy, you have to realize that it is the stronger man who wins, as General Balbir said. If you are rich or if you're powerful, then no matter what you do, they're going to follow you. So the first issue with India is stop competing, become powerful yourself. Create for yourself an ability that your nation start following you and all the nations around you start following you.
Sir, but that's a delayed gratification that will take time. Let me
go on. Yeah. I visited Myanmar as a part of the national level meeting that we had in Naypyidaw. The Myanmar military leaders called me and told me that we have a common enemy. They spelled it in so many words, Vipul. So they're aware. I was also a member of a meeting that we went to Dhaka. Similar. They're aware. It's just that today China is powerful and none of these nations want to take on China.
So to add a small thing to that, now China is also claiming Vladivostok from Russia, about which they did not talk since 1886.
Yeah,
right?
So we will see what Russia does. We will see what Russia does. Whether Russia caves in or doesn't cave in, whether this is an attempt by China. But the issue remains. If you want to conduct foreign policy and you want nations on your periphery to follow you, you have to be strong enough to make them follow you. Strong enough militarily, strong enough economically, so that you can help them. Vaccine Maitri is just one small issue. There's a much larger perspective, people, and we should not lose sight of the fact that we have to become strong first before we take on any nation in our periphery.
In fact, the subject of my thesis for the PhD was BIMSTEC, Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Economic Cooperation. My sum total of the findings was that we made a lot of progress on the political front,
yes,
in which we express that we want to cooperate, we want to be strong, we want to make ourselves grow. But this hysteria or this rhetoric doesn't get you anywhere. India has been talking about a trilateral highway from More to via Myanmar to Thailand. And one visit by the Chinese president, I think last March or somewhere, he declared an economic corridor from China down to the Bay of Bengal, right? Now, all said and done, we have aspiration, we have thought, we have ideas, but we do not have the wherewithal and urgency to execute them. So I know it sounds repetitive to say what Shokin says. We all in our think tanks, all in our discussion, we are great ones at telling who else is wrong. And at times also thinking what should be the options for strategy for us. Let me tell you something, you don't need to go far. You got to make yourself a power which is economically strong, politically cohesive, and the manpower skilled enough to build a nation economically and not only through slogans, right? All other things will fall in place. Shokin is so right that your neighbors, and even if you say 2018, you all had all the heads of ASEAN countries coming as collective chief guests for your Republic Day parade. They all want you to lead, but a leader has to exhibit the capacity to lead, the wherewithal to lead, and the lead nowadays is single agenda economy. Today, I think Ukraine said that there's been hacking of their all national infrastructure, and they blame Russia for it, right? The next war may not be territorial, right? So the battle is always on, the war is always on, the economic war is always on, the battle in the cyberspace is always on. And it doesn't necessarily always need punching bags and tanks and aircraft, which you need to make you strong. Maybe while you acquire aircrafts and tanks, you take care of yourself with the skills that you have on the cyber front, on the infrastructure front, on the economy front, some officers did NDC with me. Why has Bangladesh suddenly progressed? Because there was a kind of awakening to grow. He told me that we facilitate and train manpower to go abroad. They go abroad, they send remittances. They send remittances, you have ability to carry out development, right? And the other day, my son was telling all Indian restaurants in various European and American countries are manned by a lot of Bangladeshis and some Pakistanis, right? So we have a brand. We haven't encashed it for 75 years. And if we build muscle, economic and other muscle behind that brand, your brand will grow. Marketing alone can't do it. You have to have a product. So we need to build that product. Nobody is going to treat India like Nepal or any other country. China won't treat us like that. Even now they're a little careful, but we need to grow much more before they start thinking, yeah, listen, we are stronger, we are bigger in economy, but we can't mess around with India. We have to work on that.
So basically, extrapolating into your thought, even when Deng Xiaoping came to India, met Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi back then in 1986, the rhetoric was the same, that okay, we both whatever has happened, right? But let's now progress together. And then the capitalization, what was happening back in China wanted India to be a part of that. And then the Rajiv Gandhi team with Sam Pitroda and everybody. So that capitalization was going ahead in a certain way, and then that got derailed somewhere in the process, right? Now coming to the present state, what are again the question still remains that what is the top thing, 1 point each, what is the top thing that India has to, because now we have enemy at the gates, right? So what are the top things that the center and the military has to do together to counter this clear and present danger?
Okay. In this issue, that we've already done. Our troops are already on the border. We've already occupied defensive positions. We're already clear that if China was to come in any one of the areas which she thinks are vulnerable, that vulnerability has been removed. Okay. So if you're looking at 1 point, you're looking at the fact that the Indian army has done it all. But that 1 point is not enough, as General Balbir had said. Your population remains skeptical. Your fault lines remain fault lines. And unless those fault lines are cleared, Vipul, you can do anything. The Indian army can do anything anywhere. It will not be enough because your population would not accept you completely. So the one issue, I would go to the second issue. The government of India has to make the Northeast closer to them. Act East or think East should not just be a slogan. It must be bigger than a slogan. It must be actual action. You talked of the donor ministry. General Balbir talked of the border area development funds. Everything has to be put into the Northeast to make those people aware that India is a better option for them. Once that happens, no mother, I guarantee you, no mother will send any insurgent, any child to any insurgent group. Insurgency will die on its own.
In fact, talking about the Act East policy, by the way, ever since we made Act East, imagine we want to use Northeast as a launch pad for India's Act East policy. I wrote once Act East through Bangladesh. So Myanmar has its, let's come to realities. Like he said, slogan might not be thing. Myanmar itself is in disarray. How do I connect with the Southeast Asian economies through Myanmar? Myanmar is full of Chinese influence in terms of smuggled goods and stuff like that. Again, how do I compete with them with low-cost manufacturing stuff? So one thing that we need to do is all the trade that we have in the Southeast Asian economies, our biggest partner is Singapore. And all the trade that happens with Singapore is through sea and not through the land routes. You cannot produce in, say, in Chennai or in, say, Delhi or central India, take it to Northeast and then try to Act East. No, you need to have manufacturing hubs in the areas which are closer to the border, closer to the sea. Your access to the sea in the Northeast is either through Myanmar or through Bangladesh. Myanmar for a while it's on the hold in terms of their internal turmoils. Their insurgency and security issues dominate more than the economy. Maybe you will take time, but however, I would rather have joint SEZs on the border of India, Bangladesh. We should get out of that. Bangladeshis want to infiltrate. Bangladesh has surplus gas. Bangladesh has access to the sea. If I have a joint SEZ where there is free flow of workers, where their natural resources are used, India has extra electricity. And we produce there for export. We produce there for consumption in Northeast and Bangladesh. We are aware that Northeast has 5,600 kilometers borders with other countries and only at 23 kilometers connect with India. How did it come into being? Agartala is 1,600 kilometers from Kolkata via Siliguri and some 600 kilometers via
454.
Bangladesh, 500 kilometers via Bangladesh. Right. Now, actually, the partition of India made Northeast vulnerable and strategically important and critical, right? So we should have been waking up right from the 1948-50 onwards. We had brilliant guys in our leadership. We had brilliant guys in the foreign service. We should have woken up then. The waterways between East India and Northeast were fabulous. Now, because of Bangladesh being East Pakistan, all those waterways got curtailed. And waterways are the cheapest means of transport, which adds to your, reduces your logistic cost. And that's how the economy is thriving. And now, for last almost 15 years plus, we've had fabulous relations with Bangladesh. We are still moving at a pace slower than a snail to have these direct rail links and waterways and through traffic functioning. Only I think 2 years back, we sent our food grain of the FCI through the ship to Bangladeshi port and then into Agartala and other states. Bangladesh has surplus landed capacity of digital international cables. Why can't I make Northeast as a hub for data centers and IT? It's beautifully connected by air. We do not think that way. We do not think out of the box. And we would like to, and let me also tell you, most of the policymakers involved with the policies of the Northeast fly from Delhi to say Imphal or Mizoram, that is Aizawl and such other places. Once you go by road, you realize that to cover 200 kilometers between Dimapur and Imphal, you at times take 8 to 9 to 10 hours, right? I remember going by the Scorpio vehicle, you at times are moving at an average of 10 kilometers an hour. So connectivity is an issue, economic development is, then only can you act east. And act east doesn't lie even in Guwahati. Act east lies in More, Imphal, in Agartala, in parts of Mizoram, right? And you have to create win-win situations for you and your neighbor. Because if you're having 5,600 kilometers with your neighbor, with a term of reference of China not being a great friend, so reduce that 100 kilometers of LAC. Let me just also tell you, China was not India's neighbor. Okay, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Fauj, which was past Ladakh, they had pact with Tibet. And it is our foolhardiness that we made China as our neighbor, otherwise Tibet was our neighbor. And pre-independence, till 1950 rather, Pasighat is a place in Assam where the population from Tibet used to come for their daily needs and other things. So the informal trade was hell of a lot. How did the Northeast get starved also? Because this informal trade between Tibet and the Northeast also went for a 6, right? So the key lies in, again, like Shokin said, or the military, I would again re-emphasize the key lies in economy, making Northeast a manufacturing hub which is vibrant, because you've got tremendous natural resources, disproportionate natural resources. It forms 8% of our geographical area with only 4% population. So that means the land to man ratio is favorable. Natural resources are the best, starting from hydroelectricity, starting from flora and fauna.
Water.
Potential is immense. We have to make it a manufacturing hub to be able to act east.
So, very rightly said. Matter of fact, I would like to add that very recently we have an agreement with Bangladesh to use their international waters via Agartala to the Southeast Asian nations for the water trade. So things are moving ahead. Also, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe-san was in Northeast, and there is a proposed manufacturing hub and the SEZ in Arunachal Pradesh itself for industrial development. So things are happening, will take time. Center is doing its thing, but yes, the movement is at a snail's pace. People of Northeast feel a bit alienated from the mainland India. What can we as citizens and then the center do to bring these two masses or homogenize the population so that there is no divide? And then, we can rest assured that, there is a heavy support and the acceptance towards mainland India.
You see, Vipul, I was in Nagaland when the corona crisis or the COVID crisis hit India. We had the lockdown in March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And by May 2020, there was not a single case in Nagaland, not even a single case. But so many young Naga citizens, Nagaland citizens, and I'm talking to the rest of Northeast also, who were working in mainland India, Delhi, Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, to just a few of the places, certainly had no place to stay. So many students were outside who had no place to stay because we had closed all our institutions. And I was talking to the parents of these young citizens of India, and they were so worried. There is no educational institute. There is no industry. Where do these children study? You close down your institutions, you close down your hostels, you are people who are, hosting them in their houses, you close that down and you tell them, go back to where you are. How do these children go back? And do they go back with happy memories or with bad memories? It is such a stark comparison, Vipul, that the children of very well-to-do, affluent civil servants in rich people of Nagaland, whose children outside had no place, and they all came back in special trains 5 days, 7 days, 9 days later in terrible shape. And there were special camps there, and that is how the COVID infections started growing in Nagaland. So the issue is that we have not done anything in these states. We have not improved their roads. We've not built the industry. We've not built any educational institute. When I was leaving Nagaland last year, I had finished my 2 years with them as the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. The chief minister of Nagaland asked me, he says, General, I trust you. I'm willing to give you 500 acres of land. Please bring an educational institute of repute to Nagaland. Can you imagine, for the last 1 year, I have been talking to people, and there's not a single person who's willing to put his money in Nagaland to build an educational institute. What are we talking about? I mean, these are empty promises, people, empty issues. On ground, there is nothing there. There is no college where these children can study. There is no industry where these children can work. And then you tell them that you don't join the insurgency or you look at this issue. You're not doing anything for them. How will these children grow? How will anything grow? How will our contact with the Northeast grow? It can only be done emotionally, economically, in understanding. We are the bigger people. The mainland India is huge. They're only 8% of the landmass of the entire Northeast. Nagaland is only 24 lakh people, yeah. There's less in Vasant Vihar. There is more in Vasant Vihar than Nagaland. So, so the issue is that while I appreciate your discussion and I appreciate this point, there's no one who understands anything about what to do, and no one is willing to do it.
And
I'm sure General Balbir would have similar thoughts.
Second is, I would say, we create organization. There's a Ministry of Donor. There is a Northeast Council, which is located in Shillong. I feel one big step that you need is integration within the Northeast.
Absolutely.
You'll be surprised to know that Tripura is totally different from Arunachal.
Absolutely.
And likewise, Manipur is totally different from Assam. And there is so much of complementarity of resources, talent, handicraft, terrain within the Northeast. I think there's a very, very urgent need to integrate the Northeast within themselves, primarily through connectivity and economic activity. Yeah. What is produced in Arunachal is totally alien to even the base of that is Nagaland, right? Nagas would not know, and that's the case in entire country, by the way. If a guy belongs to, say, Sholapur districts in Maharashtra, he doesn't know. Most of them don't leave the district all their lives, by the way. And same is the case in Punjab. So we need to integrate Northeast by creating an awakening that, thing from here can sell here and from here can sell there, and connectivity. Like I'll give you again the example, Dimapur, Imphal, we should be doing in 2 hours. There should be an expressway, whereas we do it in 6 to 7 to 8 hours. National highway which connects Imphal to Aizawl, 2 state capitals, does not exist. When I was posted there, I'm told, even a Jeep can't go on that. It's a national highway, right? So,
I remember in my last conversation with General Chauhan, he said, and he very categorically said that Vijayanagar even today doesn't have a road.
Even today it doesn't have a road.
Yeah. And so, the NH53, and I know what's the latest name, which connects Silchar to Imphal again. These are the roads leading to the capitals of the states.
Yeah.
Even the rural roads in other states, say Punjab and others, are better than the national highways there.
Absolutely.
So you have to connect people. You have to give impetus to economy. And like what Shokin says, why should they all come to Delhi for education? There should be institutions over there. There's such a beautiful countryside where people from Delhi should go and educate themselves there.
Exactly.
So that's the way. And what stops me from having an IT hub at Aizawl or an IT hub at Kohima, Imphal? Very much possible. In fact, Imphal Valley is exactly like the Kashmir Valley. It's so beautiful. Exactly. It's so beautiful. Kohima is so beautiful. But then we just not put in enough effort. Internal integration is important.
So I guess we can go on, but time is of this thing, and I really appreciate both of you giving your valuable time here. So with enough said and well covered by both of you gentlemen, I'd like to say that China's map, this is a bit rhetoric. So China's map looks like a rooster and is a matter of luck for the Chinese people, as the rooster signifies prosperity in the Chinese culture. However, as the map is changing daily, China is seen pushing itself more into conflicts with the trade and wealth slowly fading away. This certainly looks like a bad omen. And as for the Northeast India, it is culturally deep rooted as Parshuram Kund in Arunachal Pradesh is where sage Parshuram washed his sins after vanquishing the evil forces, and Manipuri Princess Chitrangada was Arjun's wife, and as my we had a very good conversation, me and my friend Pem Ong Pazo from Sikkim, may he rest in peace. And I would dedicate some part of this video to him. The Sikkim state has a legend of Holy Spirit of Baba Harbhajan Singh guarding the Indian borders and the ones who are guarding it. So it's high time that we start getting an active local and central and vice versa, and a tactical support from the political factions from the northeastern region, so that the center amplifies its governance system, and mainly the military gets an added support that it really needs from our fellow countrymen from the 8 gems in Northeast. On this thought, signing off for Diplomacy Direct, I'm Vipul Tamhane. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this discussion for national awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Immensely enjoyed it.
Immensely.
Thank you, sir. Enjoyed ourselves. Bye.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Bye.